After you do the oils worksheet with your students, where you talk about the basic lines and shapes that we use to draw, then you will start doing the drawing of the cobra as a class. So on your whiteboard, have the printout of the cobra ready to go. And you're going to start talking through the different shapes and lines as a group and drawing it together. The cobra was a symbol of deity in ancient Egypt, and you can even see the cobra on the famous mask of Tutankhamun. When we look at this image of the cobra, we're going to figure out first what is the dominant or central shape. And when you look at it, you're going to see this kind of long oval shape. That's the foundation that all the other shapes can go off of. But we have to figure out where is the right size and placement of that. So where's the top of the shape? It's about 1/4 of the way down the paper and a little bit to the left. So I'm going to do a mark there so I know where to start it. And then at the bottom, it's about 1/4 of the way up and also to the left. So if I have these marks, now I can easily go in and study the shape and know exactly where to begin and end that. So the shape is an elongated circle where it's curved. It comes down to the marks here at the bottom and then curves back up, just like that. If I can get this central shape really, really accurate, then all the other shapes I go off of it will also have more probability of being accurate as well. So after all the students do this basic shape, walk around and just double check that it's as correct as it can be. If it's really, really small, it's just going to be hard. It's going to be hard to get to fill up the paper well, right? And if it's too big, you won't have a space for the head and the tail and things like that. So if we get the first shape correct, then everything else will really flow nicely off of that. So after you've double checked the students' work, let's go ahead and do the head. Where do we see the lines of the head connecting to the line of the body that we've already done? We can see that it starts connecting right over here. So I'm going to do a mark to show where that is. And then it curves over and goes past the side of the body over here and then comes back. So I'm going to start at this mark I've done. Curve up and over. Make sure I'm going past the body. Curve up. And then back down to where I've started. And I'm going to do this line in between here that kind of goes through and connects to that. And then I have the eye. And what is the shape of the eye? It's kind of this sideways teardrop. So it goes over, around, and like that. So each time you do a shape, you want the students to study what they see and be able to describe it out loud in words. And of course, I'm going to give them more of a connected neck here, just like that. So we have the cobra's head out, ready to strike. Now, what's going to come next? What's the next big shape we see? And it's going to be the cobra's tail kind of weaving around itself here. And this is going to be the most complicated part of the drawing. So have the students study that part of the tail and try and figure out which lines they would draw first. When I look at it, I would draw the central line here that becomes the pointed part of the tail at the end. And if I get that middle line right, then I can do the other lines around it that would be accurate as well. So when I study that line, I see that it comes here from the body, it winds down, goes up again, and then comes to the pointed part of the tail at the end. Now, what lines do I see above that line? And I see a line that comes off of this main shape, but it hits right here on that line. It doesn't go quite towards the end. So I'm going to do a mark there, and then I'm going to come through and do the curved line I see, but make sure it hits right there at my mark. What other lines do I see? I see one that comes from about here on my basic shape, and it winds around and then hits that pointed part of the tail. So now I'm going to study that shape, talk about it, and then be able to come around and hit that. So that's close to being done. What else do I have? I have a curved line that if I had an imaginary line connecting this one to that one, I see that it would start right about there. So I can kind of just line it up and do a mark And I can also see that it will curve around and hit about here. I like to do a lot of markers just so I know when I do my curve, I know exactly where I want to land before I even land there. I can see that this line curves downwards when I study it and connects like that. So all of a sudden we see this tail kind of winding up and around and back out. Now we have the basic shape of the cobra, and we also have some interior details that we haven't done yet. So ask the students to describe what they would draw first and why, and what it looks like. So most likely we would do this central line here, has a slight curve to it. We can see that it kind of curves that way, and then back to the left and down. And this one is parallel, it follows it. How wide is it? It's pretty skinny. They should study it and think about how wide it is compared to the width of the rest of the shape. And then what do we see next? We see some mirror image designs happening on either side. How big is this first shape? A little bit higher than halfway. So I'm going to go halfway up here and do a mark on either side. I know that that's where that goes. Now I can study the curves I see and go in and around and do that. Since I have my marker here, I know exactly where to start. So I'm going to go around and do those curved lines right in there. And then below it, we see that there's a shape that curves up and down and over and down. So they should be constantly looking up at the image on the board and thinking about what those lines do. The more they look at the board and less at their paper, the more accurate it will be. And sometimes that's counterintuitive. They want to look at the paper more and thinking that that's going to give them accuracy. But the more they look up, the more they can actually know what to draw. So just encourage them to constantly study what they see up on the board and just look at their paper a little bit, just as much as is necessary. So now we have these cool shapes in the cobra here, and that's done. Anything else? Yeah, we have some lines, that create 3 stripes here at the base, and they can all connect up to each other this way. So now we've copied the cobra drawing, and if they'd like to, they can go in and add some designs and shapes and things into these 3 shapes on either side of the cobra's body, and they can just add their own creativity that way. So they can add anything they want and add just some cool graphic qualities to their drawing. And then if there's time after that, then they can add some color using colored pencil or marker to the final image.